Good morning. How are you?
Good. How are you? As
Everything
usual,
is good.
uh, a- as usual, I seem to be the only one ready to go at this early hour.
Yeah, we'll invite them now.
Uh-huh. Well, it may not be so early other places too. It could be in the afternoon. Don't we have one student from South Africa? Judy Lynn, good morning.
Good morning. It's good that my phone ring.
Good morning, Nuran. I'll just wait a minute or two and then begin. I believe it'll be recorded, so Okay, shall we begin? Let me begin by first asking if there are any questions from last week, if there's any outstanding issues that must be addressed before we get into today's subject matter. Any
Yes, Professor.
questions?
Hello.
Yeah. Yes, good morning.
How are you? Actually, it's good night here.
Okay, good night to you.
Unfortunately, I was not able to complete to do the quizzes so far.
Okay.
So
Well, yeah. Well, the thing is with the little quizzes, which really will
I will do it. I
count.
will do them.
Yeah.
I will
Well,
do them.
the only problem is, Ahmed, is that I would like to start each week with going over those answers. So once the answers are discussed with the class, then it's really unfair to have you submit the questions, because I'm going to give everybody the answers. So let's just consider that these multiple choice little quizzes are somewhat insignificant in terms of your final grade. They're really simply an educational assistance for you to kind of see how well you have
I
grasped
understand you, Professor. I understand.
grasp the chapter and then move on. Um, as we get close to the I guess midpoint of the class, maybe in following the Thanksgiving week, we'll schedule a midterm exam, uh, and then simply have a final at the end of the term. But this is really more again educational. It should benefit. It should have a benefit, of course, because I'm asking students to do something. But once we go over them, then for the most part the answers are out. Okay, let's go over them briefly. I know Judalyn Nuran is here as well. Um, okay, chapter 4, multiple choice questions. Uh, the first one, zoning is an exercise of which type of general limitation? C, police power. When doing multiple choice questions, sometimes there's a chance to eliminate one or two of the answers, and that will give you a higher probability to select the right one, even if you aren't quite sure immediately what the answer might be. For instance, eminent domain, we of course discussed all of this, but eminent domain is where the government forcibly takes your property and then agrees somewhat to pay you what it feels the property is worth. Okay, so we know that zoning and eminent domain really have nothing in common. So therefore, that also eliminates alternative E, which says all of the above. Since eminent domain is not a consideration, then all of the above can't work. So you read it down to taxation, police power, and as cheat. So therefore, remember what as cheat was kind of a word that's not even uh, in the English language, but it does have a purpose in real estate. Remember, if you can go back, it says when someone passes away and no one knows if that person has any surviving heirs, uh, then the state can only take it over. I mean, the government can only take it over because it doesn't know who it belongs to. So if it doesn't know who it belongs to, well, it goes to the state. So therefore, if you are certain between C and D, well, C was the correct answer. Number 2, a comprehensive plan usually deals with which of the following? All of these. E would be the answer to 2. 3, property taxes are a major source of revenue. 4, E, both local and school districts. For the authority for approving site plans ultimately rests with A, elected governing officials. It's really, again, at the local level. Local projects gives that answer away somewhat when it says local. 5, the most accurate conclusion about the regressivity of property tax is that it is D, regressive, but when benefits are considered, the net result may be fair. Regressive in the sense that the more, the higher the value, the more you're going to pay. That's also a type of tax known as a value-added tax. As opposed to a fixed tax where everybody pays the same amount. Number 6, traditional land use controls include E. 7, a new form of land use that replaces zoning is form-based zoning. A. 8, new urbanization is a term used to describe D, the theory that residential should be integrated. 9, elements of traditional zoning include all except A, performance standards. And 10, externalities in land use often include all except D, the inability to judge the quality of a structure once built. The questions are challenging, and they should provide some measure of how well you have understood the chapter. Again, the multiple choice is really in the form of a review. It shouldn't be taken so much as an indication of where you stand relative to a final grade at this point. We have, 21 chapters in this book, so a lot of material still left to discuss. But again, I urge you to do that. So by the time a midterm exam comes up, and certainly the final exam, the amount of preparation will be manageable, since you have been working all along reviewing the multiple choice questions. In fact, I could probably tell you right now, any exam questions will be the study questions, the open-ended questions at the end of the chapter. So if you do the multiple choice questions and then take a look at the open-ended, the discussion questions, if there's anything there that you feel you don't know, my suggestion is to take a look at that section in the book to try and say, oh yeah, okay, I see where that comes from. I can manage that on a test. And anything you feel you understand quite well, just move on. But both the midterm and final exam will come from those discussion questions at the end of the chapters. Okay, the two chapters that I asked you to review for today would be 5 and 6. If you haven't checked Moodle yet, for next week, I just had one chapter, chapter 7, because for those of us here, it is a holiday week. A lot of people will be traveling. I don't know how many people are, again, unable to dedicate their usual amount of time to study. So I just thought of assigning one chapter. So for next week, on next Wednesday, we'll review chapter 7 and the multiple choice questions at the end of 7. Any questions so far? Everybody okay? Chapter 5 is a chapter that reviews the evolution almost of cities in the U.S. It provides a historical perspective of how major cities grew in the U.S. what attracted cities to form at a certain location, and as a consequence, how did the city, once it began to form at a certain location, develop and grow. I don't value this chapter as being very important to us. Again, it's more of an historical perspective. It provides no future, looking towards the future. Not much theory here at all, or anything relative to real estate, uh, today moving forward. So let me just pass by this very quickly. And I just, of course, I had to read it as you are. I have no special notes or anything to help me with. I'm just reading and say, okay, yeah, that's interesting. Um, Chapter 6 is very important to us in today's real estate world. But it discusses how do we measure uh, many things in the real estate world of today. How do we measure whether people like something? How do we measure future demand for development, for housing? So it's really a review of research, marketing research, which is current and practical. So most of our discussion today will focus on chapter 6. Let me go through briefly, though, the PowerPoint slides for chapter 5, so you can have a feel for what the chapter is about. I encourage you, of course, to read in all of the chapters with equal interest, but in terms of again, value to us as real estate, as people considering real estate as a future occupation. As we mentioned in the very beginning, a number of different areas in which you can work in if you decide that real estate is a field that you would like to enter. We talked about property management, managing properties. We talked about working with developers that build, construction people that build properties. You can consider becoming a realtor, the buying and selling of real estate. In all of that, in each of those areas, the basic knowledge of marketing research is important. So we'll get to that in a minute. Let's just take a look through chapter 5. And then we'll spend most of, at least the greater part of today's discussion looking at at chapter 6. Ways to minimize market risk. The best way to minimize market risk is not to do it, is not to do anything. So if you want to minimize market risk, don't build a hotel in the area that you think, don't open the restaurant, just stay where you are. No decision is a good decision if you want to eliminate risk. Actually, most of this isn't even relative to the to the early part of the chapter. Okay, here, where cities occurred. Most of the major cities in the world pretty much began near rivers, and rivers were important as a means of transportation. And this goes back, to the formation of cities, in European cities, Paris, London, a little bit older than New York, for example, any of the U.S. major cities. A lot of them, again, right next to rivers, where rivers allowed for the transportation of material. So even today in the U.S., moving forward to 2023, of course, the cities remain where they are, but major industrial plants are also located near rivers, especially the heavy industries in the U.S., such as steel, car manufacturing were all located near major cities. Pittsburgh is also referred to as the Three Rivers. It stands at the mouth of three rivers, interestingly. Again, rivers offer a means of exporting products, and that's the service that they provided. That's why most of the major cities going back hundreds of years were formed near rivers. Okay, a multiplier effect only meaning that once you have one benefit, okay, it's near a river, then you're going to develop factories, and then you're going to develop schools, because factory workers and their kids need schools. So once the city begins to develop historically, then services begin to develop there as well. All right. Again, I didn't want to spend a whole bunch of time on this chapter. It's a historical perspective of how major cities began. Where does the data come from to review all of this? Here you could see the census data. Census in the US is conducted every 10 years. On the basis of the census allocation of government resources, how many people, how many representatives will a state have, actually is determined by movements in population. And I'm just going to, again, briefly review this. There isn't really much here that I could even consider asking you on an exam. This point here kind of reflects what I'm saying. Even though you have a city such as New York was created next to water, as all are, the Hudson River. But as the city began to grow, then sort of secondary industries such as publishing began to publishing businesses began to be formed, and New York became a center for artists and authors, people trying to get their work published. Cities also are often the birthplace of many of the universities in major cities. Even though the more agricultural based universities, which was their objective in the very beginning, were often formed in pretty much the middle of, I'll say this because I attended one, in the middle of nowhere. Universities such as Penn State University in the middle of Pennsylvania was formed really as an agricultural center. Serving the agricultural people in that area. All of them, Michigan State, Ohio State universities, all of them were formed pretty much in the middle for either agriculture, energy, and that was about it. Okay, this is what they refer to as agglomeration economies, that once a center begins to form, then secondary industries begin to form around that. And we'll see one of the theories we're referring to as a concentric theory. Just like the area just begins to develop, moving out in all sides here, airport, financial, the financial capital of the world, considered Wall Street, is in downtown New York, right on the water there as well. So again, once a city has begun to take roots, then it becomes the attraction for a number of secondary industries. There's something called a rent bid model. It's saying, like, the more attractive the city, the more likely people will be bidding for space, as opposed to areas where pretty much it is attracting people to come live there, and simply says, well, we'll give away free land or the rents or whatever we can negotiate with people. But cities often have that attribute that you have to bid. It's sort of a supply and demand type situation that all of these cities produce, only because often more people want to live there than the services can provide for them. So as a consequence, people bid for the rights for property to rent, whatever. Okay. There's always there was a tendency of people want to always live closer to where they work, but as these cities develop and became congested, then you saw the formation of the suburbs. People started saying, well, the quality of life within these cities, especially if I wish to form a family, to have a family, is really not that good. So I think I'll move away from the city for a better quality of life. As a consequence of people moving to suburbia, as we often refer to it, then the city had to respond by building transportation means to get from the outside of the city to the center of the city, where many of these industries were. And that then created the development of the highway system, intra-highway system, meaning the highway system within a state. And then eventually in the 1950s, I believe, especially in the US, the development of the interstate highway system, where one highway led into a highway of another state. This also encouraged the building of railroad access from outside many of the cities into the cities. So again, the importance of the chapter's again main contribution is a discussion of how cities formed, and then how they began to develop and mature and become what they are today. What I'm saying is that it's more of an historical perspective that really doesn't require, I don't believe on my part, any clarification of anything here. So I would just refer you to reading it, just getting a feel for the historical development of major cities, and then we'll just kind of move on. Demand for medical, that's something I may not have mentioned. Again, the more as the city grows, the greater the population, the greater the necessity for doctors, police departments, firemen, again, schools, universities began to develop, many of them in the New York area, Boston, famous schools, Harvard, MIT, many of those schools in Boston. And then again, you have the state-sponsored schools located pretty much in the middle of states, where they can take large tracts of land, because some of these state universities are enormous. You almost need to fly from one building to another to catch your next class. But again, they are very well known and very much a part of each state and American culture as well. Okay. This is what I was referring to before, the concentric model, sort of like it's cities grow outward, not necessarily in one direction, even though it could, depending on what is surrounding the city. It might be mountains, might be desert moving out west, it might be further water. or it can move like concentrically in circles, smaller circle, then bigger circle. That's referred to as the concentric mile. And I wouldn't ask you anything like this on the test. It's somewhat, again, more historic in value and not as relevant today. And this is what he's referring to as the concentric. First, here's the city, number one, the downtown, then people just on the fringe of that. You don't want to be too far away from where work is being conducted. So you go to circle number two, and then as that becomes somewhat overcrowded, then people move even further away, and now you're getting into where it says like white collar executive areas, further away from the city, longer commutes, but most likely more expensive homes as well, and new homes. Some technical changes. Again, this sort of reflects the historical perspective. It's kind of interesting. I had to read it as well as you all do. 1921 car per 13. By 2003, one car per driver, meaning everyone perhaps over 16 or 18 years. Curious to know what that would be today. It could be maybe 2 cars per person, something like that. But that would depend on the area. Actually, I know some wealthy people who own multiple cars. Just to stand there and look at them, I guess that's the purpose. Technical changes, the assembly line going back to Henry Ford's pretty much invention to speed up the manufacturing of cars. Someone once asked him if he will, all of the cars that initially were manufactured were black. Someone asked him if he would begin manufacturing cars in different colors, and his response is something to the extent, sure, all of the colors, but they'll all come out black, something like that. Yeah, we'll do it, but they're all going to be black. So it was pretty much of a sarcastic response to a question. But of course, as we know, eventually that did happen. Okay, this is why I say changes, technical changes. Yeah, great. We have air conditioning, fluorescent lighting. And we also have indoor bathrooms. Yes, Jasmine.
Sorry for the interruption, but do you need any help in sharing the screen, the
No,
PowerPoint?
No, I'm okay. I have the other one right down here ready to go as soon as I finish this one.
Okay,
Is this
you're
okay?
not yeah, yeah. I just want to know if you want to share it.
To share it? I thought it was
Yeah.
shared, isn't it?
No,
It's not been.
it's not shared. No.
Okay, well, I do have, let me see, shared up. Okay, up here I have it shared. Well, it shows shared. Is it that let me see. Is it that on the PowerPoint, Jasmine, there's
It's beside the leave or the mic icons.
yeah, I have it here shared. It is highlighted. It says include
Okay,
computers.
you chose the window you want to share.
Okay. I'm not quite sure where I'm supposed to go. I do have the share. Okay, it is being recorded. That I know. Video effects, language settings. Okay, where would that be then, Jasmine? Because again, it shows that it is shared. 2% of move.
You can choose the entire screen button.
Entire screen? Okay.
Yeah. If the one window it's not working,
Okay, where would I find that? It's the entire screen.
first you click on share. It's
Yes.
beside the leave and mic icons.
Uh,
Okay.
yeah, okay, I do have it. It's highlighted.
You'll see a screen.
Screen.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yes, screen, yeah.
Yeah. Share it and open the PowerPoint or whatever you want to share. Okay. You shared the screen now. Open the PowerPoint from your PC. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, can you see it now?
Yeah, I can see it, but maximize it, please.
There we go. Is that better?
Maximize the entire window, like the beside exit icon.
Oh, you okay? See,
Don't be right.
like that?
Yeah, that's totally fine, I think. Yeah, exactly. Okay. Sorry for the interruption.
Not at all. I'm only again trying to make. Okay, so you wanted me. Okay, everyone can see that now. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yes, Professor.
Okay, let me point out that the PowerPoint uh, the, for each chapter have been uploaded to Moodle. So I do have them in Moodle. I don't mean to uh, use that as an excuse, but you do have access to them. Uh, Let me just go and get some more water. I'll be back in a second. Okay, back. Before I go to the kitchen. Okay. All right. Let's see. Okay. Let's. Again, I don't think you really need me to explain or justify the advances in technology such as computers and cyberspace and smartphones. Okay, some pictures of actually Jacksonville. As you can see again, the water a city in northeastern Florida. Again, the proximity to water and shipping. Okay, let me um, let me just, well, we pretty much finished that anyway, but again, the focus of chapter 5 is a historical perspective of the growth of cities. They all pretty much began near rivers to enable shipping through water was still a little earlier before rails came in, especially let's say in European cities and Asian cities, I guess. But the formation of these cities was entirely due to the proximity of water as a natural mode of transportation. And as people began to gravitate toward the city because of the work that was provided there, as a consequence of the trade and the movement of goods. You also, I didn't mention it, began the development of the trade industries, lawyers, accountants, doctors, everybody looking for work and looking for prosperity would go to the cities. And again, there's really nothing there that's I believe that much of a benefit to us moving forward, but nevertheless, I did want to just give you kind of a brief overview of that. Let's take a look at 6, which is far more significant to us in real estate today, moving forward. Oops. Why do research in real estate? What would provoke someone to say, does anybody know anyone who could do research? We are in need of research. Well, there's probably too many reasons to enumerate. Estimating future demand for a some of the personal preferences of people, the 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom studios. What is their preference, personal preference regarding the housing they would purchase? There's really no shortage of why research would be conducted. Research, as we think of marketing research, really has its origin. There's just sort of a brief intro. Market research has its origin in educational research. Marketing research, the use of research in the field of marketing, going back to the 1940s, let's say, when marketers began when the field of marketing began to develop. When you have one product that dominates an industry, you really don't need much research because everyone's buying your product. There's strong demand for it. What is it that you wish to know that you don't already know? You have a product, it's very successful. What is it that you don't really know about the product? When I say the beginning of sort of the modern marketing era following the World War II, and millions of people involved, of course, all over, returned home, then you began to see competition in each of the industry groups begin to develop. Whether it's cigarettes, whether it's automotives, once it's household products, soaps, cereals, beer, for all of the major consumer goods categories, competition began to develop. And as a consequence, manufacturers began to have some questions. Well, how do we compete against our competitors? Our competitors are doing very well. We're not doing very well. What is it that we need to do? What do we need to change? The original way of trying to measure consumer feelings, attitudes towards something was to get a person in and use the old Sigmund Freud method. They lie on a couch or sort of sit up and simply ask them questions. What do you think about this? What do you think about that? Eventually somebody said, you know, educational psychologists are using something called a questionnaire. And the questionnaire is a set of questions that allows them to gather quite a bit of research in a short period of time. So eventually, marketing research adapted some of the techniques of educational psychology, and that became part of marketing research. So where did marketing research actually begin? It began from observing the work of educational psychologists. There are different views towards research. I guess the simplest way of looking at it is to say there's the way that economists do research and the way that marketing people do research. And it's important to discuss for a moment that distinction, because if you are reviewing the research done by someone else, it's important to know what is the origin of that research, what is the thinking of the researcher, because whether it's economic research done by economists or research done by social scientists such as psychologists, sociologists, marketing people, each of those two people pursue research in a different way. And as a consequence, how one would interpret research would be different. For example, if you have conducted, if you have no economists have reviewed their work in previous classes, you will notice that what economists use, or the primary element of what they rely on, is data. Now, it can't be future data because it hasn't occurred yet. So what economists use is past data. It's sort of like the expression of driving your car, but looking out the rear view mirror to see who's behind you. For example, in order for economists to determine if the economy is in a recession, it's really, I believe this is the case, I'm not an economist, 3 successive quarters of declining gross domestic product. Okay, looking at a map, if you see, start any place and watch that trend line go down for 3 semesters, each one being a 3-month period. So you have 9 successive months of declining gross domestic product. You are in a recession, but you have to have first experienced that in order to say moving forward. Now you could say, are we still in a recession? We're 9 months into one. Now you've simply said we are. Well, we don't really know yet because we have to move into the future to collect data to look at it through the rearview mirror. So they rely on past data. They don't do a lot of they don't pay a lot of interest into things like sampling. We have the data. This is the data we have. Let's analyze it. We use quantitative methods, statistical models, and come up with these conclusions. And this is what we do. So the economic model of research is using past data to try to interpret the future, which may in fact be quite different, because at some point the recession has to end, and that sort of trend line going down has to begin picking up and going upwards. Okay, that's the way economists do research. The way social scientists, sociologists, psychologists, marketing people do research is to first formulate a plan. That plan we'll refer to as the methodology for doing research. It begins with some speculation, hypotheses. This is what we think we're going to have happen. We believe that if we change the flavor, we change the size, we change the packaging of the product, people will begin to buy it. Okay, so you're beginning with a speculation, a hypothetical, hypothesis to be more formal. Market social scientists will then, knowing that they can't access all of the information about the economy as the economists do, because they can get information from any of the government departments. That information of, let's say, 9 months of declining GDP is everybody. It's a reflection of the whole US. So their data is US wide. There's no information that's excluded from that database that they're looking at. But in social sciences, you say you can't interview everybody to find out if we change the flavor, we change the size, we change the color, that people will begin to buy our product. So what you have to do now is to design a sample. A sample is a group of people that you feel is representative of everybody. If we had a chance to interview all 350 million people in the US, if they would buy this product, if we change the flavor, we change the color, we change the design, we'd know for sure if they'd buy the product. But the cost of interviewing in any form, mail, telephone, person to person, would simply be exorbitant. So we select a group of people to obtain our data from that we believe is representative of everybody else. So if we interview 100 people and say, this is what we plan to do, will you buy the product? If the majority say, yes, that is exactly what I've been looking for, and I'll buy the product, well, then we can assume that once this product hits the general population, people are going to buy it. Okay. The next difference between the way economists do research and the way social scientists do it is then to design a questionnaire in order to collect the data. As was the principal means of data collection of the educational psychologists, well, their marketing research then designed questionnaires and gave them out, collected the data, and then analyzed them. There is a procedure for developing a questionnaire, which is outside the scope of this class, so we won't get into it. But once that is done, and once the data is received, and then it is analyzed. So what is the basic difference with this? We could spend more time if this was a class in research, is that the economists rely on past data to project future behavior. Social scientists rely on today's data, actual data, in order to project what the future will hold. What they both have in common is they're attempting to forecast, they're attempting to look into the future to see what the future holds for their product, for their development. But the means in which they reach those conclusions are really quite different. Something else that's important to us in research, and that is the difference between, well, let me take a step back for a second. a number of distinctions in research, other distinctions exist as well. A minor one is the distinction between quantitative methods and qualitative methods. Just for a second, the economists use quantitative methods because they really are trained in the use of statistics, the use of modeling, things like that. So economists also are very comfortable working with statistical models. So we'll call that quantitative research. Qualitative research, the use of questionnaires, of focus groups, simply observation of people's behavior. Sometimes research companies and manufacturers will send somebody just to observe how people are viewing something. Okay, that is referred to as qualitative research. So usually economists do quantitative research, and social scientists rely more on qualitative research. Now, at the at the side of, or the level of academic peer-reviewed research, it's not uncommon for a study to combine both methods, to use both qualitative elements in the research and to use quantitative elements in the research. So when it gets to academic peer-reviewed research done by the scholars in each of the subject areas, they can easily combine the both. Okay, one last distinction in between different types of research is the distinction between correlation and causality. What is the difference between correlation, and causality? Causality refers to the ability of a variable to influence the behavior of another one. For example, talking about cities, the larger the population of the city, the more likely the incidence of crime will be higher. This would be an example of a causal relationship. One variable is causing another variable to form, to be present, and to move in the same direction, meaning the larger the cities, the greater the incidence of crime. That is causality. When you can demonstrate causality in your research, you have achieved the more difficult level of research. Because of the difficulty in research to prove causality, most research will simply rely on correlation. Correlation is simply saying that two or more variables tend to react in the same way, but we cannot establish that one variable influences another. For example, using real estate, you could say something like an examination of the larger homes will also reveal that they have swimming pools. But is that a causal influence? The bigger the home, the owner has to say, okay, I definitely need a pool now. My home is bigger and I need a pool. Well, probably not. A lot of big homes don't have swimming pools. Knowing something about this as a realtor here in South Florida, a number of people with big homes, and many of the single family homes here are pretty big homes, prefer not to have a pool. Why? Because the owners may be seniors. They don't use the pool. They know that the pool requires maintenance. And maybe they're also afraid there's been accidents. It is unusual, but it's not that very unusual. You read a story of some kids jumping into the pool of a neighbor's home. something like that, and there's an accident. A kid doesn't know how to swim, a kid banged their head against the side of the pool, and there's an accident. Sometimes people with smaller homes say, we have to figure out a way to have a swimming pool. We have kids, and the kids love the swimming pool. So that would be an example of a correlational relationship. The size, the bigger the house, has to have a swimming pool. The fact that it's not necessarily true would make it a correlational relationship rather than a causal relationship. Market segmentation, another concept that's found in the field of marketing, and of course applies to real estate. Real estate developments will be focusing on or targeting on certain groups of the general population. Multi-million dollar condos in Miami high-rise buildings are not targeting people earning, let's say, $50,000 or $60,000 a year. They are focusing on a group of people whose incomes or net worth is in the millions of dollars. I caution you about using income as a measurement, because a lot of people, especially in the areas where there are more seniors, they don't have any income from employment because they're retired. They'll have income from, let's say, investments or other means of paying their bills, but they aren't working. Okay. So what is market segmentation? Marketing segmentation is a technique or is a practice where a marketer will look at the general population and try to identify, but most importantly, measure the size of certain segments that might be relevant to your particular product or project. Okay, again, a company wanting or feeling a need for high income condominiums in obviously a location which attracts high income people would be focusing only on the amount of potential buyers in this particular area. If we built a 50-story building with the least expensive floor plan at $1 million on the first floor, going up to a $10 million penthouse on the 40th floor, what is the potential size of the market for a project such as this? So market segmentation is simply saying, I'm going to look at a group of people, whether they are people willing to invest in real estate, whether they're people that drink beer, there are people that drink coffee, and I'm going to try to see if there's any differences among the people in this market. If everybody behaves the same way, you have what is called a homogeneous market. Everybody likes the same thing. So why should you offer a non-alcoholic beer if everybody that you've interviewed drinks beer, loves beer, and doesn't want to see the product changed? You do not have the presence of market segmentation. What you have is a market that is homogeneous. Everybody likes the same thing. What marketing people do, however, is to try to research what people like about a product and what people don't like about a product. And let's say they're doing marketing research on beer and say, do you like beer? Which ones do you like? What would you like to see different? And if enough people say, you know, I really like the taste of beer, but it's fattening and it has alcohol. If you in some way can eliminate the alcohol and retain the taste, I'll buy that product. But I have to confess that I've given up drinking beer. So the marketing researchers go back to the laboratory to where they make the beer and say, listen, is it possible for you to make a beer without alcohol? And then the scientists say, well, let's give it a try. At some point, they actually did invent a product that tasted like beer, but has no alcohol. That then is the start of a new product or a new product category called non-alcoholic beer. And that's how it works. Marketers begin to look for little pieces of the general overall market that has some peculiar differences or would like to see something different. And if you can go into the laboratory and actually do that, then you have the basis for a new product. The same thing was done with all of the product extensions that we see today. There was only at one time one type of aspirin, one type of Tylenol, regular aspirin, regular Tylenol. And then people started saying, you know, I just find that research would say, do you buy this product? Nope, not anymore. Why don't you buy it anymore? Well, you know, I take two when I have a headache. It doesn't do anything for me. So I just try to lie down or put some cold compresses on my head. And so market research goes back to the laboratory and says, hey, can you invent a pill that is much stronger than an average Tylenol or aspirin? And they say, well, let's see if we can do it. You know, we may have to get approval from the government, but let's see if we can do it. And sure enough, you had the birth of extra strength aspirin or Tylenol. And all of the categories that we see today have all evolved in the same way. Going back to the earliest days of anything, cigarettes, beer, coffee, soaps, toothpaste, there was only one Crest toothpaste, only one Colgate toothpaste. Now, if you go to the store, you'll see 4 or 5 different varieties of toothpaste, of facial soap, of anything. And this is how marketing, the new products became introduced. Okay. Corollary 1, most market is irrelevant in studying. I don't know where that comes from. It's certainly not true. Most important data may not be readily available. Yes, market data may not be available. If we built this project over here, would we have enough buyers? Well, boss, I don't know. Well, how can we know? We can't make a major investment in the millions of dollars in the development of a building, a project, without knowing in some way if the demand for that product is going to be substantial. Well, now we'll do some research. Can you possibly imagine the amount of research that was done before Disney, the Walt Disney Corporation, developed Disneyland in Florida? In the middle of Florida, the largest employer of people in the state of Florida, which is a very large state. How much research was done in order to identify that spot as the place they wanted to build their new amusement center? The greater the anticipated investment in something in real estate, for sure, the greater the amount of research that was done. If you're going to invest a very small amount to say, well, maybe, you know, this location over here, this little strip mall, we could put a pizza place. Well, you know, maybe you'll do some research, maybe some observational research just to take a look at the traffic that goes by that location. But when you start building billion-dollar projects, you must have an amount of research that is commensurate with the investment that be made. Research must recognize the challenge. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It isn't easy. Okay, the cycle of market research creates a story. The story that the chapter is referring to is what I'm saying in more academic vocabulary, using a more academic vocabulary, is the methodology. What is the methodology for studying this project? In economics, the methodologies are quite simple. It's simply get me the data from the census people, from the Federal Trade Commission, from whatever government organization produces this. That's their methodology. There's very little, again, sampling done or objectives done, simply because they know what it is they're doing. So what they're referring to here is the cycle of research is really more of the methodology used to study this particular whatever it is. These elements here, what is the product, who is the customer, where is it, the competition, these really would be sort of the inputs into why are we doing this, but not necessarily part of a research methodology. But as part of a research methodology would be elements like this: collecting data, evaluating research, the results. Research sufficient. Is it possible after you have done your research that you are still not sure if there's sufficient demand to build this project? Well, if you're still not sure, what is the better alternative? Go ahead and build it anyway, spend millions of dollars in the development of a project and without being sure that this project will meet demand, or do more research? Well, the more prudent decision would be simply to do more research. If you're not sure what the results are saying, then do more research. What is missing from a more academic description of research is to say design of a questionnaire, what type of analysis are you using, how are you analyzing the data, that sort of thing. But for people not familiar with market research, this is okay. Clues about segments. Where can the information come about if you're not good at doing this type of research, or you'd like to obtain it? You can get it from a government or trade groups. When you buy research or it's given to you because it's available to the public, this is referred to as secondary data. Secondary data means that you are using the data of someone else. If you're using the data of someone else, you need to be sure that that data is reliable data, that it's good data. And how would you know that? Okay, you are a residential developer. You build residential communities. You have the option of buying a 50-acre plot of land out away from the, let's say, closest cities, how would you know whether or not that will attract buyers in 2 or 3 years once that the model homes begin to be built? Well, there is some information available from this institute, from this university. The one way of knowing, can I use this data, is to say who collected the data. Is it from an institute, a university, a government agency, trade group? Is this, who collected this information? What can you tell me about how experienced the people are who collected this data? Number two, when was this data collected? Well, it shows that there is substantial demand for housing in this area. But I just noticed that the date of publication of this study was 2005. Okay, 18 years ago. During that 18 years period, other housing was built in other areas, and possibly there isn't any demand remaining for this particular development. So who collected it? When was it collected? You should also ask, why was this data collected? The reason why the data was collected is because you may find, if you Google demand in, Southwest Florida, you may find an answer, something pops up, but that study was conducted for some other reason. It was a study of animals in that area, of animal population in that area by the Florida Fish and Wildlife Agency. And in that study was a section that says the potential for residential development is quite high. And you pick that up. But that study was never conducted to measure demand, residential demand. It was simply done to collect information about animals living in that area. So that's called secondary data. When you go out and collect your own data through questionnaires, through personal interviews, when you yourself collect the data, that is referred to as primary data. Primary data is data that you collect and you feel you've done it well. Secondary data is data that you have received from someone else. Paying for secondary data is okay. In the field of academic research, if someone said, "Did you pay for that research?" You say, "Yeah, I had to pay the Department of whatever because they produce these reports and want to make some money selling it. So I had to buy it." That's not a crime. It doesn't diminish the importance of the research if you have to pay for the data. Okay, I will refer back again to the concept of where they say market story is really what is the methodology used? A methodology begins with, why are you doing this research? Introduction. The purpose of this research is to measure demand for a potential housing development of 1,000 families in this particular location. And then the steps that would be taken to conduct that research. The market story is really the methodology, the reason for doing that research. Not quite sure what he means, a story approach versus conventional marketing research. When you're conducting research, either because you work for the developer or you are a marketing research agency that conducts research for paying clients, you really use the same approach. If you were hired by a developer or a property manager to do research, it doesn't change the way you would do it. If you work for the developer or you work for a separate marketing research agency, or if a developer asks a university that's nearby that they often use to conduct certain types of research, and they pay the market research people at the university, whatever it is. The information or the methodology or the approach done is the same. Anyone who is trained in research, whether you're an economist or a market researcher, has learned how to do this. There's no variation between people who know how to do this. There is variation between people who don't know how to do this, but it is the way it is. Okay, they can start with the start with the state of the world. If you're doing research and you're presenting your results and you're trying to figure out if there's demand for a new a park or something, you don't start with the state of the world. Well, this is the world that we face today. This is the conflicts here, and this is the economy here. I mean, it's really unnecessary. You focus simply on the immediate subject matter, the property. The chapter gets into certain examples, which I would suggest you review. They won't be a part of any future exam. The Elysian Forest Project, the Palm Grove, the Plain Vista, three types of developments, three types of research studies, and how they conducted their research. So suggest that you read through those. Notice what he's saying over here, no difference in marketing questions between existing and proposed. This really is a reflection of what I was just saying. The people who have been trained in research, it doesn't matter what you are studying, who you are doing the study for. If you've been trained in research, you know that there is a step-by-step process. I refer to the core of the research as its research methodology, and you don't deviate from that. Much more market information available for existing properties. Yeah, there's always more information for something that is already existing because people are already gathering information about it. For things that don't exist, yeah, well, why am I going to collect or pay for information on something that isn't relevant at this point? Why would someone pay for research studying what exists in the middle of nowhere in Florida, in the heat, the mosquitoes, the condition of the soil? Why would I have any interest? Oh, you want to build a 1,000-acre, who knows how big it is, amusement park in the middle of Florida? Okay, now I need market information. So, okay, that goes without saying. Information often is not available when it comes to certain subjects of which there has not been any prior interest or concern for. Therefore, this last point, the greater challenge in conducting research is when you have to collect information about something that doesn't exist, that no one knows anything about. This is the graded challenge. Okay, we talked about PUDs last week. It's again, a planned urban development in which the developer presents a picture of the areas in which the houses will be built, the areas in which they'll have some recreational areas, where they're going to have parks, where they're going to have roads. The common areas are referred to as the areas that everybody walks by, travels to get to different locations within the community, and then the recreation facilities that will be provided. Uh, Many of them down here are quite obviously people come to Florida to retire, so many of the communities here will have amenities such as golfing, golf ranges, golf courses, tennis courts. Many of these developments are close to water for those people who like boating. And therein lies some indication of where the study will begin. What would be the steps? If you're considering a property near the water, and your potential market would be boaters, people who like fishing, people who like fishing, well, there you know where you would go to collect information about potential demand, to try to identify if people that are boaters or fishermen, to see if they would be interested in buying property in this location. Uh, so just the mere presence of the project, where would it be, often can tell an experienced researcher pretty much in clear terms, where do I go to collect information about the demand uh, uh, for properties built in this area. Okay, this is an overview of that Elysian project. How many sales first year, second year? Noticeably, the development, the sales in the last year tend to not be very favorable, but that can be interpreted in different ways. We don't have, not looking at the report, but it could be there isn't much space available. So by year 5, the actual potential market is maybe 100 and, let's say 4 units, because everything else has been developed. A view of the house. Comparison of the house to different similar properties. This would be a brief look at a PUD, which sort of shows this would be the common area. If you can follow my arrow, anyone is entitled to walk along over here. This space here is the common area. You see, space within each of these areas would reflect, I guess, the home. Um, the project is evidently a residential community. The top customers is an indication of where my interviewees will come from. The interviewer, ER, is the person who's conducting the interview. The interviewee, with EE at the end, like employee, is that we want 30% of the sample of the people interviewed to be from the top household income, but not the top 8%. So let's say we know the millionaires, maybe I don't know, 2 or 3% of the population are millionaires in the US. So if it's not the top 8, then probably we're looking at people whose income level is $400,000 or $500,000 a year. Those will be the people that would be interviewed. Okay, again, this is specific to that particular project. I suggest you take a look at it and see if there's anything there that that you would like to question. The core market segments, okay, getting back to market segmentation. So what they have done is divided their market into 5 different groups of potential consumers. You have the traditional family, the empty nesters, the single parents, other families, and unrelated individuals. Well, we don't know exactly what that means, but empty nester refers to parents whose kids have left the home, an expression of again, coming from birding. The birds have left the nest, so the bird is there by itself. The same thing with parents. When children have left the home, is referred to as an empty nest, and the population or segment that represents is often referred to as empty nesters. It also could be married people with no kids. It's not that unusual, but sometimes adults, just couples, decide they don't want children. Where did this data come from? This data came from, at least what they used for their study, the US Census, American data, table whatever. Okay, is this primary data or secondary data? Well, this would be called secondary data because it's data that is taken from some other source. If you were to use US Census data, you can be confident that the data collectors there pretty much know what they're doing, and you don't have to question the competency of the statistical department in the US Census Bureau. What you would always ask, of course, is when was this collected? Excuse me. Census is usually collected every 10 years in the United States and serves as the basis to determine actually the number of congressional representatives in different areas, not related to real estate. However, it's done once every 10 years. You could be looking at data from the year 2010. I think the last census was 2020. It takes them a few years actually to get all of that data into the system. Census data is data collected from everybody. As long as they can reach you, you will be in that database. So imagine trying to collect data on 350 US citizens, how long it would take to get those questionnaires into the computer system. But maybe you couldn't find some information, so you went back to the 2010 census. well, then you have a right to say, I'm not really quite sure if this is applicable today. But anything collected by some of the US agencies that have been doing this for quite some time, you can feel confident that this is reliably collected. Okay, the actual outcome, they built 20 speculative units. Staff dissenter, never sold one. Project went to foreclosure, firm went into bankruptcy. Well, welcome to some developments here in Florida that happens. It may not have been that anything was wrong with the data. It may have been that something was wrong with the interpretation of the data. So who is to blame? Well, I'll let you look at the actual outcome. But it's quite possible that the research was wrong. The conclusions reached by the researchers on the basis of the data that was collected was wrong. Remember that data from go back a second, from the census people. This data was not collected for the purpose of determining if the Elysian study would be successful. This data was collected for the purpose of identifying the income of people in all the U.S. So the Elysian researchers took that data and tried to, like a rubber band, to stretch that data to enable them to reach a conclusion that there would be sufficient demand for this particular project. So it wasn't the data that was wrong. It was the assumptions built into that study that people in these income level would be interested in buying the property. And evidently something was done that was incorrect. Many things were done incorrect. Okay, study number 2, Palm Grove Office Complex. This is a commercial project. 2 buildings, one 40,000, 4 floors of 10, located in a mixed use. We had both residential and commercial. It was the largest speculative office project ever proposed for a certain area. Who are the customers? General purpose office users with at least 25 employees. Okay, that was the target that they were focusing on. General office people who had offices with at least 25 employees. Okay, well, that might have been a poor assumption. Startup organizations may not have yet 25 people. Would a startup with maybe 5, with a small accounting firm with maybe 5 auditors be interested in that particular area? Well, probably not. They'd be probably overpaying for that location with only 5 employees. Okay, no special plumbing. If you wanted to put a lab there or something technical that required special equipment, sorry, but those spaces, that floor plan was not designed for any special needs. Okay, with the customers, notice what do customers want from Pine Grove? Small firms, easy, but yet the general purpose, the size of the organization was 25 employees at least. Not really quite sure if 25 employees would count as a small firm, but that was one of their assumptions, and the people they wanted to collect information from. Okay, canvass the business community, examine census data. Okay, this is the alternatives. I don't know why they couldn't do both. Okay, from country business, fewer than 10 firms had more than 25 employees. You see, 25 employees is not a small company. It's pretty much of a large company. We think of the major global companies with thousands of people, but for a small community, 25 employees would be a large company. So, you see, there is again the context matters. Uh, Major cities have space for who knows hundreds, if not thousands, of employees, but yet a small community with 25 employees for commercial business would be a large business. Okay, third alternative, plain Vista Apartments add 400 units to the present 500, so almost doubling what it has. 4 years old, high quality indoor gym, diverse location north of Orlando, parameter of city, no special amenities. That's kind of an interesting challenge. What would be interesting to know is that it says this existing project was 500 units. It was 4 years old. I would question, well, how quickly did you sell out the 500 units? How quick did the demand develop? Was it sold out within a year? Was it sold out in 4 years? Or you still have any vacancies? Close to the Orlando airport, which would be nice for people who work in the airport or in the airport area, stores working in the area to live over there. Okay, what is the product? High quality apartments, working people. Okay, they had a database on 43,000 businesses. They had information from the U.S. U.S. Bureau of Labor. Okay, I'm not quite sure the purpose of this data might hold for them, but it's often better to have more data to look at than less data to look at. The only problem is overemphasizing data that is not relevant and underestimating the data that is relevant. Okay, did we have a final? Let me see. Okay. Okay, they reviewed the surrounding areas. Suggest that Plain Vista is in isolation from larger Orlando market. Doesn't necessarily mean anything to me. Okay. Okay, there's what I say, close to the airport. Looks like that would be a source of customers. Okay, let's see. We certainly collected a lot of data. No other apartments were anticipated in the area for 2 years, so okay, there's their research. Total units 500, and then they added 400. Okay, a market analysis is always a story. Okay, no market analysis is purely numbers. Numbers is important, but this is why looking at secondary data, such as the census people, how many people there, whatever, is looking in a way as, remember earlier I was saying about economic data. Economist research relies on past data. All of the data from the census, everything that's secondary data, is for the most part looking at data through the rear view mirror of your car. You're looking backwards, okay? For something like this, what you have to understand is you're looking forward. You're looking into the future. And it's not that once this product is available that you're going to rent out the additional 400 units in a week. It could take months, if not maybe a few years, to rent it out. In the meantime, you have vacant apartments that have to actually have some sort of maintenance. Here in Florida, you cannot leave an apartment, let's say it's unoccupied, without air conditioning. The humidity that will build up in that apartment will cause some danger to the apartment. We have here what's called mold. It's a fungus that will grow on anything. They live on moisture. In fact, as realtors, what we tell our clients that are here just for season, getting away from the cold weather anyplace else, is that once they leave, they must have somebody that's checking their home, and you must leave the air conditioning on, but have it set at a higher level so that fresh air is being pumped into the unit at all times, or else you'll have a problem. So in this particular case, all of the secondary data might have been, unhelpful unless they collected behavioral information, where they did surveys or asked people, would you consider moving to this area? To ask that question takes you away from past data to future behavioral data. So what emphasis did you give to the past data, census data, and what emphasis or money was invested in the collection of behavioral or future data? This is exactly what I'm saying. When you buy real estate, you're buying a set of assumptions about the future. Now, the thing is, with this particular development, I think it was more of a rental community. So it wasn't so much that you are buying a property. You can rent something for a year. If you feel it doesn't suit you, well, after the year is up, you move someplace else. But in general, when you do buy real estate, you're buying something in the future. You certainly don't want to see your property lose its value. You certainly would be happy to at least maintain its value. That is the nature of real estate. The value of the real estate can go up and it can go down. And buyers have to understand that. Okay, real estate markets difference cyclicality. Yes, goes up, goes down. Office demand follows business cycles. Good times, people invest in businesses. People who, yeah, I think this is a good time to open up my pool cleaning business. I do some accounting at night for family and friends. Maybe I could open up my own business. Yeah, and I work for myself. That would be pretty cool, wouldn't it? Okay, the vacancy rates, pretty much the national vacancy rate pretty much parallels uh, the Orlando rate. Now, this, of course, is the latest information I have, 2017, so it is a bit old. Geographic information system, stuff that comes from satellites and now even from drones is very helpful in giving potential buyers a perspective layout of a home. They're doing it now for individual homes. There are companies that offer their services to kind of give you a three-dimensional view of a home from an elevated view. Very impressive work, and certainly helps people make decisions about whether to buy or not to buy. When I refer to the information about future behavioral data, which can only be collected through interviews, not through U.S. Census data, past data. The word academics often use is psychographics. Psychographics is another word for behavioral data, which includes things like attitude, measuring attitudes, interests, opinions, values, and demographics. Okay, what the Buena Vista study needed, Plain Vista. There's actually places in Buena Vista. What the Plain Vista needed, as well as secondary data, was data related to people's future interests, anticipatory behavior in order to construct a development. Would people buy in that area? Would they rent in that area? Sometimes homes close to an airport often is subjected to airplane noise. If you were to buy someplace like that close to the airport, you would question, what is the direction of flights coming in and leaving the airport? Imagine buying a home and finding out that you're right in the path of flights coming from, let's say in Florida, from the Northeast, from New York, from the New England area, New York, Boston, all of those places, flying probably 4 or 5 flights a day, going right over your house and leaving your house. That probably wouldn't be too much fun. Okay, this is an example of a GIS survey done in Columbia, South Carolina. Survey research, useful tool, a potentially powerful tool if used carefully. I would have reworded that. It is a powerful tool in the hands of an experienced researcher. I did mention earlier that there is a procedure for writing a questionnaire. And few people who are not trained in research understand that. So I wouldn't say potentially powerful. It is in a way one of the most useful and frequently used tools to collect research. But it has to be designed by somebody who knows how to do it. Okay, risk obtaining in ending with meaningful questions or, okay, well, yeah, if it's not done by people who know anything about it, you're going to get some strange stuff. Okay, this concludes our work for today. Are there any questions before we leave? Okay, let me wish you all a very pleasurable Thanksgiving week if you are observing it. I know some of you are not currently located in the States. I don't know if it's any significance for you. Next week, as I mentioned, I have just assigned one chapter, taking into account that people might be traveling a bit and not have the time to read the material, substantial amount of material. So we'll go to one chapter for next week, and then following that, pick up, start with two as we kind of really get to the middle of the course. And pretty soon after Thanksgiving, I'll prepare an exam for you, a midterm exam, and then we'll proceed. Okay, so for next week, chapters 7 and the short answer questions, and that should do it. Any questions before we depart?
Thank you, Professor. Professor, can I still upload the answer to the questions?
Well, for chapter 4, I'm afraid not, since I already gave you the answers. So work on 5 and 6. Begin, try not to forget any of them again. So you're going to have 20 short answer quizzes for the rest of the term. So if you've missed any of the first 4, it's not really that significant. So don't fail to submit the 5 and 6. Sometime by the end of before next Wednesday, when we discuss the answers to it. But you still have 15 or 16 more opportunities.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Sarah, Jasmine, are you still with us? Okay. Well, wishing everybody a very pleasant day, a very pleasant weekend, and a very pleasant Thanksgiving week to all of you. And we'll get together again next Wednesday. Okay, goodbye.
Happy Thanksgiving Day.
Okay, Thanksgiving
Bye.
to you as well. Okay,
Happy
bye-bye.
Thanksgiving. Bye bye.
Okay.